Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Cupid's Coach podcast. I'm your host, Julie Ferman, inviting you to transform me to we through the process of doing dating better. And you know what helps us do dating a little bit better? The powers of intuition. I have a very special guest today. Her name is Shannon Swallow. And how I know her is because one of my dear friends has studied with her and raves about her. So I've invited her onto the show. I'll tell you a little bit about her. She's a spiritual teacher, an intuitive guide, a women's coach, and a couples coach. She founded something called the Clairity School, a community dedicated to energy awareness, intuition, and personal development. She says, I'm a spiritual teacher who's dedicated to helping people transform through the power of energy awareness and intuition. Welcome to the program, Shannon. So glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Yeah.
I see that you're in the Midwest.
I used to be, back in the day. Right now, I'm in San Diego, sunny California. So then it was a great childhood growing up there. So I lived in the suburbs of Chicago and it was beautiful.
And
Yeah.
then school years, where were your school years?
So I was one of those people that grew up different houses, neighborhoods in the Midwest, but born in California, lived on the East Coast, went to school on the East Coast, then moved abroad. So I'm, a little bit of a wanderer and the great thing about that is I've gotten to see so many different parts of the country and parts of the world. So it's been really fun. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to know that you're based in Southern California. I've done matchmaking in 12 different markets.
Wow.
And at one point, I had an office in Solana Beach, probably just a little north of where you are,
Yep.
and Newport Beach and West Hollywood and West LA and Westlake Village, but then St. Louis and Kansas City, everywhere. And most of the people in my world are in two hubs, either Southern California or New Mexico, Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is where I started hiding out with my husband about 8 years ago. And we spend
Yeah.
our summers here. And it's just a really lovely place to live. And I do go to LA when I need to
All
produce
right.
a be with colleagues. But I find that my personal just happiness is better in wide open spaces and no traffic jams and never a problem parking. It's just
Yeah.
we all have to find our home, don't we?
Yeah, that was a big transition when I first moved to San Diego. I was really close to downtown, and I lived in a cute little neighborhood, and then moved in with my partner a year ago, and we decided to do the beach life in North County and close to Solano Beach, a little bit north, and it's quieter. And I had to drop off something at the post office, and it was 9 o'clock, and everything was quiet. And I actually thought this last night. I was like, this is so nice. It's just my lifestyle, the outdoors, getting a great night's sleep. And as you get older, those are the things you're looking for. So it's been a really fun transition. But yeah, it was really noticeable when I was ready for it.
So
Yeah.
I heard you say you have a partner. I have to know, how did you meet?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna keep this short because this is not a short story, but it's over a history of 20 years. We've been on and off. I lived in LA 3 different times, and we met at a friend. He had just moved from New York to LA, and I was out at a friend's dinner, and we met at that. And it was one of those kismet things because then, unbeknownst to both of us, our friend said, "Hey, let's the three of us go out to dinner." And what he was trying to do is see if there was a spark. And I remember, this is a true story, we were sitting next to each other in dinner and in one of those curved booths, and his arm touched my arm, and it was like, and I felt this zing. And I tell you, the rest is history. It's a storied history. It's a roller coaster history. But it's one of those people that we can't quit each other, and we finally, pulled the trigger and just went for it after 20 years of really fun and also challenging experiences. So yeah.
Love it. Well, you know what I always will go back to, and I'm trying to figure out if a particular relationship might have legs, if it might be worth having that second date, third date, um,
Right.
carving each other out and just focusing on each other. I'll always look for what the key criteria are. And almost always for a woman, the character integrity, honesty piece is there.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing he has that, or you wouldn't be with him.
Does, and it's I think especially being intuitive, and believe me, in my own love life, I'm great. It's one of those things where you can read other people, but you have to be neutral, right? Like, so when people come to see me, I'm neutral, and I'm neutral about them. I want to help them, but I don't have an opinion about their outcome. I'm just trying to help them get what they want. For myself, of course, I want what I want, but it's really hard to read it for myself because I'm not neutral. But that is one of the things that in being intuitive, you really, it's quite obvious when someone's hiding or lying or not being coming forward with their full selves. And he is someone who absolutely has that. And I think you're right. Like it just wouldn't have we wouldn't have been coming back around, even though there are, of course, like any relationship challenges and things we're working on, and developmentally and from a maturity over these 20 years as we've grown up. But yeah, that honesty, integrity. I mean, it is the most important thing to me as an intuitive who can read energy. I just can't handle lies. I can't really handle it.
And we can feel it when something's off, when
Yeah,
there's a lie in the space. We can feel it.
absolutely.
The other thing that I'm always looking for when I'm looking to match people is shared values and a couple of shared passions. Would you say you two have that?
Absolutely. And in fact, we do tend to we are opposite. Is literally like Oscar and Felix. And sure, that's I'm dating myself, but if anyone remembers that show, The Odd Couple, we are so opposites in the way we see life and the way we approach things, but we both love hiking. We both love outdoors. We both love cooking. We both love movies. He's an actor. We both love travel and were similar politically. And so there's a lot that, sitting at the dinner table or when we're planning our week or, month, that it just not that connection's there. And I think that helps with the rest when we're so different about how we live our lives.
My husband and I connected instantly over camp experiences. We were both camp counselors and we both love hiking and walking. And no matter what's going on in our relationship, we have a commitment to get out and walk our dog every day. It's a couple miles, it's beautiful. And even when things are tense, we do that together and we know that we need to. So, a couple of passions like that. And also binging. We binge on stuff together. And it's just wonderful to find your common ground and cooking together, all of that. So
Yeah.
far, I am liking the sounds of this relationship.
Yeah.
How you didn't know I was going to grill you on your relationship, did
Oh,
you?
but I wish I had you, years ago. I mean, it would have been great if I had some coaching, honestly. Even back then, I was fumbling a little bit through it, and I wasn't ready, and I was still maturing and finding my way. But yeah, when you reached out, I went to your website and I was like, oh gosh, I love the way you talk about how you help. I love the way that your approach, and it just resonated so much with me.
So, one more question about your relationship, and then we're going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
move communication. Typically, we girls have spent a little more time in the study of personal growth, development, communication. And yet, I hear from women all the time they're looking for a guy who's at her level in that regard. I, I, Tell me, is your guy at your level, or do you kind of lead that part of the relationship?
It's one of our challenge areas. When you're like women say it's challenge, it's definitely a challenge. And I've watched him really grow over the last 20 years. Like when we first met, he came from a family that was not affectionate and didn't hug or kiss and my family, I grew up with hearing "I love you" all the time, every day. Even family's the most important. We're never gonna, abandon the family, even when there were tough times in their marriage. They just, I just was surrounded by that, even with, um, they were both type A plus plus personalities and intense people, and even when we had family fights and stuff like that. So I grew up with touch and affection as being really critical as a part of intimacy and communication. And I watched him kind of radically, and not radically, it wasn't overnight, but over these years, he's actually now the more affectionate one, and which is shocking. So the communication, I think because we were off and on, neither of us really fought for that. We just went, well, okay, we're long distance a lot of the time anyway. Let's just, when we see each other, make it work. And we don't know what's going to happen. And I actually say this all the time. I wish back then, and I guess I wasn't ready for it. I wish I had, even for myself, committed to learning best practices in communication. And what's funny is prior to being in this full-time work as an intuitive and spiritual teacher, I was in marketing and communications. So communications, I was a spokesperson for companies. I was the one who was building message architecture and really was able to develop that in my family life and friends, but not in my love life. And I'm finding that I'm not as emotionally mature in my communication space, even for myself. So it's definitely where we're working on and challenged. And I don't even know. I say I'm leading, I think holistically, but we're both working on how we communicate to each other. And that's equal right now. Yeah.
I encourage women to look for what I call a threshold of willingness to engage in communication, even when it's challenging. And I think it's a healthier way to go about it than just assuming that everybody's going to walk around being the Dalai Lama. All right. So, Shannon, I have a really important question that I'm dying to ask you about intuition. It's related to sex and intimacy when a new couple is exploring together.
Mhm.
I'm wondering what effect those hormones have on intuition. In other words, when we are flooded with hormones, when we're passionately, making out, jumping into the bedroom, having orgasms, all of that, can we trust our intuition more or less with
Right.
those hormones?
That's a great question. And it's funny, I just had a reading yesterday with a male. It's actually been men who's been coming in lately to work on their sex life, not as many women, interestingly enough. And sometimes it just goes through cycles. But my experience is that even as a psychic and intuitive reader, when that does come up, it does sometimes get in the way. Like, for example, people are asking me, "Well, how is this match, and what's the energy between us?" And if they're in that hypersexual, like love at first bloom energy, and I don't see it, that I'll say, "Well, I see the sex is good, but here's this here are these other things that are in play." It's more that they don't want to hear it at that time, right? Like that clouds their vision in that way. So I don't know, I see them for an hour a month or just working in a healing package in those kind of formats. I don't know how it shows up in their daily life, but just how it shows up in a reading energetically, it absolutely does affect how they see the potential of that partner. Um, and they're
Makes a lot.
not really willing, yeah, to, like, look past that in the beginning.
When we have sex and when those hormones are flying through our body, those are the bonding hormones, right?
Yeah,
Oxytocin is the bonding hormone. It's the
right.
same hormone that surges through our body when we're nursing our children, right?
Yep.
And and I remember when my youngest son was 6 months old, and it was one of those 3 in the morning nursing sessions, and I just loved him so much. I thought I was going to burst. And
Yeah.
I remember, as I've been studying this stuff, I'm like, that's oxytocin. Whoa. And I could feel it. And it was like he's looking at me and I'm looking at him. And it's like, the stars were in alignment. It was so amazing. But when that happens, we are attached. And the
Right,
great creator wants us to be attached because why? The great creator wants babies. The great creator wants the survival of the species. So we're going to defend that relationship. So we might
right.
be in counseling session and the psychic might say, Julie, you and Gil, I don't know. It's really not really all that. No, no, no. We're great. We're great because
Right, it was yeah, it's so interesting to me, and also as people go through the arc of the relationships with sex and intimacy and then the emotional and how they start to get more real with it. And then, the first bad thing happens or the first fight, and they're like, okay, I want to know. And even then, if you go, well, the sex looks good, they're like, oh, yeah, but the sex. So it's funny to watch how it plays out in different contexts for sure.
One of the questions that I have is about healing the heart. Um, it's one of your specialties, is helping us heal our hearts. And the question I have for you is, how do we know when it's time to begin getting out there again? How do we know when our heart is healed enough that we can actually engage? I'm asking this question because there's this beautiful man in my world right now, and
Mhm.
I can tell that his heart is really hurting
Right.
from a long marriage that ended in divorce, and it just shattered
Right.
him. And I want to do my part to bring him into a place where he can be whole enough to entertain the possibility of new relationships. So I invited him into my boot camp because it's a 30-day process, and we'll really dive in on a lot of the issues, and I'll have a chance to just take care of him and love on him. And I think within 30 days, we'll know if he's ready or not. What can you say about readiness for dating when your heart has really been hurt?
I wish there was an easy answer to this. I wish there was a definitive answer. My experience and literally reading thousands of couples or thousands of individuals going through a breakup, looking for love, trying to make a marriage work is it. I haven't seen a pattern in all those times. Like there isn't a right time. I've worked with women whose partner cheated on them 26 years ago and they still haven't really let themselves be vulnerable or something always doesn't work out, but it's because there's a block. And that's it is one of my specialties because I think when someone gets caught for whatever reason, it doesn't also have to be betrayal. It could be trauma in their early years. It could be I just read someone yesterday who had sex pictures as a 7-year-old boy that experienced shame from no outside influence, right? But here it was coming up. He's in his 50s now, and it wasn't clear. And it was still stuck in his space and so he was hiding kind of the intimacy level and the sexual space. So it's really, I have to be honest, it's when I get in there on each individual basis and I look, and sometimes I had a client who had been broken up with, no cheating, nothing like that, just really loved this guy, and I worked with her for 5 years, and I remember when she first came to me, she's like, "I'm ready for love, I want it now." And I was like, "Okay, great, I'm gonna try to help you as much as I can," but these things kept coming up for her to work on, self-development. It wasn't just clearing the heart, it was things she needed to feel certain about herself and a sense of security about herself instead of being insecure. All of a sudden, and I remember her saying to me like 3 years in, "Shannon, like, come on, it's been 3 years." And I was like, "Look, stuff keeps coming up for you. I can't tell you what I don't see." And it was the 5th year where all of a sudden I was like, "That's it. I see a guy right in front of you." And she goes, "I met a guy 2 months ago." And she ended up marrying him, having children, they're still together. But she had to do this deep work to get herself there. Now, I'm not saying your guy is gonna take 5 years, but I do think that doing that work and looking at the heart and seeing where you lost your space, got stuck, gave up your power, lost your space to the heartbreak, it's worth looking at all that, whether it's through therapy, whether it's through intuitive healing, whether it's through matchmaking coaching. We all bring something to the table for our clients, and they're going through a process. Yeah.
I was thinking about it this morning that I want to spoil myself with a session with you because there are some
Great.
habits that I want to work on. And
Yeah.
I can see as I look back in my life, there's been trauma over finances, trauma over not feeling safe,
Mhm.
trauma over feeling that I've been taken advantage of, lied to, um, stolen from, basically. And
Right.
so it's continued on through my life. And so is this the kind of thing you can help me with? If so, I'm going to book you.
it's funny. I don't know if you had a chance to look at my website, but my two areas of specialty are love, and I don't always call it love, but women's female energy, turning women on, couples, that space. And then the other one that's a big part of my practice is I call it intuitive, growth hacking and business coaching, mentorship, because I was in business. I started in marketing and really the corporate world. I didn't start in the psychic world. I started in the corporate world and moved up the corporate ladder, was in business for 20 years, global marketing, and I just have such an affinity for people who are in that space and then also trying to find their way as they become entrepreneurs or follow their heart and what they want to create in the world and have that picture about not being able to have that and money, right? We talked about that a little bit earlier. So I like to help people there because I want people to have their best lives. I think like you do, right? How can you help someone be the highest expression of themselves?
What what issues do you see consistently in your practice related to love and romance? What are the stumbling blocks that are just catching people all the time? What do you see?
People putting blinders on. Oh, I don't it's ironic, right? Because you get all the people who are like, "I want love." I get people who say, "I want love, but not yet," or "I'm not ready." And they except they really want it now, but they're so afraid because they've been shut down or abandoned or they have their pictures that they just pretend in a way they fool themselves. They say, actually, I know even close friends like this that go, "Yeah, I just broke up, but I'm better off being single. I need to take care of myself right now." Now that can sometimes be true, but usually when people come to me with that picture, it's not true. Else their spirit wouldn't have brought them to me in the first place. So that shutting down, the hiding from themselves, that is pretty significant. And then when I say, "No, look, your spirit even wants this for you," or "this is a core kind of part of your path in this lifetime," and you know this already, you don't need a psychic on your show to tell you this, but love and relationships are consistently across the board for a spirit coming into a body experience a core goal, a core, what I call mock up, a dream for that spirit in terms of development. Relationships are our most important mirrors. So when someone says, "No, I don't want that," there's something there. And I will say that this was for me personally. And I'm not going to go through my whole life story, but I'll give the quick points. When I was little, I said, "I don't want to get married." I was like, my grandmother said, "When you get married," and I said, "Grandma," and I was 10 years old, "I'm not going to get married. I'm just going to have boyfriends every 5 years." And, whatever that was. And as I grew up, I was so independent. My parents raised me to be independent. I was really loved my life. I mean, I didn't sit there and go, "Oh, I'm missing out." Even, having this guy long distance and part time and on and off really worked for me actually for such a long time. And it wasn't until we were about to move in together that I wanted to die. I was like, I am not okay. And I wasn't suicidal. I don't mean I'm being a little dramatic here, but I was hitting picture. I would say to myself, if I died tomorrow, I've lived a good life. Yeah. And when I had to sit down and meditate and dive into that, and when I looked at that, I was like, oh my God, I have told myself for the last 40 years of my life, 50 years, that I didn't want this or need this in that way. And so maybe because I was in that space and working that space, I called a lot of clients to me like that. And that was my hello, right? Our clients are our mirrors a lot of the time. Um, but yeah, it's been interesting to watch that. And then when people, and it's so rewarding when clients start to get through that and wake up and open up and be vulnerable again and fragile again and but real again about, "Oh, I want this. Now what do I have to do to get?" And then we get to clear through those blocks. It's pretty profound. It's one of the things I love the most about the work, to watch that kind of life transformation.
About the pull between I need to love myself first,
Mhm.
fully and truly and wholly before I can love someone else. Well, I don't know that we ever fully get there in loving
Right.
ourselves. It's an ongoing practice that we invite and practice in our lives. um, how much do we need to love ourselves before, like, how do we know that we love ourselves enough to even be uh, healthy enough to be in a loving relationship with another human?
Look, there might be a lot of psychologists that disagree with me. I'm really coming at this from an intuitive space where I've just from my readings as my data points alone, and right in the last 20 years, I've given about 10,000 readings. So I have a lot of data points. Um, my opinion about relationships, it's maybe very reductive, which is you go into a relationship to learn. You don't have to love yourself to learn. You're learning to love yourself through the mirror of the relationship. So hopefully you are developing that as well because you care about it, because you want to feel good and you want to be in a healthy, supportive relationship where you're setting your needs, setting boundaries, asking for what you deserve, and that your value is also there. But I've read people who are in their 20s who are married in a relationship that don't quite love themselves, and the marriage looks great for them. The love looks great for them. It's what's helping them get there. So that's the perspective or the point of view I come from.
Um, and I can tell though that in order to grow in a relationship, we need to feel safe communicating and opening our hearts to this person. And we can help each other grow in terms of how to be safe with each other.
Look, there are a lot of people who don't have that in a relationship, but it's certainly something to aspire to and work on. You're calling in your relationship that's based on where you are, what you're working on, what your karma is. I'm someone who just, again, I think because I see it, the past life stuff comes into play so often. People are working out past life stuff in present time. Um, that's how you develop that. I mean, there are people who do not come into this world safe, and it's not because they experience trauma with the first family group. They might bring in a family group that actually gives them that, and they still don't feel safe because they're working through maybe lifetimes of not having that. Um, and so then they'll call in a partner that's not safe. So again, it's still developmental in my book. They're learning if safety is one of their goals for this lifetime, like a core goal, then they're learning how to do that as well through a relationship. And I think, look, they don't all have to be love relationships. We get this through parents, we get this through friends, we get this through, I worked out mommy issues with female bosses. It didn't have to be with my own mother. You work it out, you're going to find your people, but it's having those relationships that are important and committing to that.
Another question I have is related to authenticity.
Mhm.
We all strive to be authentic, and yet we know a lot of people who are fooling themselves completely. How
Mhm.
do we know if we're being authentic?
Um, I see it in two different buckets. I think I look, I think you have such a beautiful view of the world, the population, where you're like, we're all striving to be authentic. I think people who are interested in self growth are striving to be authentic. I think people who are interested in learning are striving to be authentic. I don't know that everybody's in that bucket or there yet. But let's say for people who are, yeah, it's one of those things that um and I hate to say this, but I think this is where a psychic comes in handy sometimes because including myself, who's been doing this work and looking at myself and looking at pictures for 20 years deeply, I don't know what I don't know or what my unconscious is not ready to bring up to my conscious. So sometimes you actually need, for example, when I get stuck, I actually go pay someone. I have my mentors and I'm like, look, I need someone outside of myself to look at this because I cannot see the forest through the trees because I'm just hiding from it. I'm afraid of it. I'm I haven't been ready. And so we don't always know, and that's where people like coaches or intuitives or therapists are really helpful. I think it's the most important thing is asking the question, setting the intention. I want to be conscious about my authenticity. I want to be conscious in my life in general about who I am and how I show up. And I want my relationships or my life experiences to show me that. And you start there and then it starts to come. I mean, really, I do believe so much in setting the tone of your life. When you're in the driver's seat and you're asking, you don't have to have it all figured out about how you're going to get there or have all the answers. Life will start kind of aligning to what your intention is.
What point in your life did you discover that you had intuitive powers, psychic powers that a lot of people don't have or aren't in touch with?
So I started seeing things like ghosts. Like, how do I say this without it being supercharged? I started seeing energy, seeing ghosts when I was little, but it didn't happen very often. I mean, once every 3 years or whatever. I even in high school we did a Ouija board, which I do not recommend, but and I didn't believe in it. I was just like, that's not real, except it totally was, and it worked, and it scared the crap out of me. I saw, things that started getting more intense, and then I just shut down because I was like, nope, no, thank you. I do not want that. It wasn't like the movies where it was like, oh, now I'm this, psychic out in the world that's thriving. No, I was the opposite. I was like, I don't want this." So I actually really tried to turn it off. As I hit my, I would say, late 20s, it was like Fantasia and stuff started exploding out of me. I mean, it just was one of those things. And I never associated seeing spirits with being psychic, to be honest. I just thought that was seeing spirits, except that, when you're just unconscious to something, I knew when things were going to happen. I didn't even think of that as psychic because it just wasn't in my world so much. And, I said to my parents, I see a ghost. My dad's like, I don't believe in ghosts. That was the end of that story, right? Like, that's just, it was not ready yet. It was as these experiences started getting more intense, I went to a shaman that my sister was studying. She's a naturopath. She went to best year and she said, you have to see the shaman that I'm studying with. And it was actually, I had psychics, seen psychic. My mom took me a psychic. She's like, you're very psychic. You need to take my train. This famous psychic. And I was like, you're just trying to scam me, lady. I'm not psychic. Right. It was like that. I just didn't want to know. But I think things were getting so intense that when I saw this shaman, this woman who said, look, you are a healer and a psychic, and it is in your heart, and you have blinders on, and you are making yourself so much more vulnerable, and this is never going to go away. You're too strong. You need to find a teacher, you need to get safe, and you need to find someone with integrity to teach you. And I flew back to Chicago and I went to a spiritual bookstore. I was like, do you guys know where any teachers are? Because at this point I was like, right, the minute she told me it's never going to go away, I thought, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to live like this the rest of my life. Like, I actually need someone to guide me." And she said, "Oh yeah, the spiritual bookstore said there's a psychic school right up the street in Wrigleyville." And I was like, "Wait, there's psychic schools? Like what?"
I
Right.
didn't know. You just told me.
Right. Most people don't. Why would you? And I even people who look online, I don't know that people go psychic school, I think they go intuitive classes, spiritual class, things like that. And that started my journey, and it was really even the first class where my whole world opened, and I was like, "Oh my god, everyone here is speaking my language. People know what they're talking about. They know how to get safe." And actually, when I told the director, I said, "Look, I'm just here. Tell me how to turn it off." And he's like, "Well, that's not what we do. We teach you how to get safe with it." And that was the start. That was 20 years ago. And within 2 years, I was teaching there. A year in, I had my own professional practice. Now I was working full time in business, so I was doing all that part time, but my world blew open and I've just never looked back. I just continue to take trainings. I do the things I love within the space. I leaned into this full time, like 10 years ago, and I've just never looked back. It's such a beautiful part of my life. I love being of service. I love tapping into it to help people.
You are good at helping us manage our energy. What does that mean and what does that look like, managing our energy?
So there's a basic premise in energy work. So everything is energy, if we can all just agree. And that's not even psychic, that's science, right? Atoms and they spin and a table is made up of energy, your couch is made up. That's just that we can all agree to that. But you as a body, there's this kind of foundational tenet that says you have your energy, right? We all know that. You exist, you have your spirit, and then everybody else has their own energy. The challenge is that we walk through the world and we're so unconscious to this. I think people are, well, not as much anymore actually, but still the amount of people I teach and that go where people go, "Wow, I didn't even understand this really," which is that we take on other people's energy all the time and you don't have to be talking to someone to take it on. I've watched this happen walking into a cafe where if you're a healer, which like for example you are, and you're maybe having a good day and you just like to help people, and there's someone in the corner of the cafe that sees you out of the corner. They don't talk to you, they don't come up to you, but they see you, right? Energetically. They're not thinking this consciously, but their subconscious knows, oh, she's a healer. And they jump energetically in your space. Have you ever had a day where you wake up and you're like, I feel like crying, but I don't know why? That is literally someone else's energy in your space. Like nothing's happened to you in your awareness, but we handle people from across the world. We handle natural disasters. Our energy field takes on other energy. So, energy management is teaching someone that that exists, that you can change it, that you can manage your space with energetic tools like protection and getting your energy in movement and moving negative energy out so that you can change your space. You can change your energy. When you do that, you become more of who you are because it's only your energy in your space. This, it sounds maybe simple, but it's so profound when someone really starts to change what they're in agreement with handling in their own space. So that's the premise of getting into any kind of even clairvoyant work or intuitive work, advanced intuitive work. You have to be able to do that first. And we teach that in a 5-week class at the school. It's called Energy Essentials. I do privates too, but yeah, it's kind of what changed my life once I learned that.
It sounds like you have a process for engagement. So from not very much money, blog articles, interviews, whatever, they can work with you one on one. They can work with you in a group. Tell us a little more about how you work with people.
So first, I have Clairity School, which I founded in 2021. I've been teaching since 2007. I've taught at several other schools, and then I finally decided, like, why am I not doing this for myself? I just wanted to set the tone and go do and kind of create what I wanted to create. So Clairity School, yes, has kind of this intro point. This is Energy Essentials. We have other 5-week electives that are just fun for people to learn about women's intuition and healing and energy healing and courses like that. And then there's another path, which is kind of getting deep into the intuitive or psychic work. We have a year long, it's our most popular class, our year long intuitive training, which teaches people how to read energy, which isn't just, I don't think of just as a parlor trick skill. You're learning how to read people and read and see who they really are. And that helps in everything. It helps in relationships. It helps with your manifestation. It helps with your ability to be in the driver's seat of your own life. It's empowering. It gives you power. So there's so many benefits to that. And then there's all these other like advanced trainings after that for years, which I won't even get into because there's just a lot. And then I have my own private practice, and that's where I'm a coach. And I have an entry point where you can just get an hour reading, and uh, it's easy. You just sign up for when you want to sign up. And then I also work with people on privates, as well as coaching programs. I have an intuitive woman program. I have this intuitive growth hacking where I help businesses through intuitive work. And I typically work with leaders, business leaders, and entrepreneurs to help them kind of get to answers about their business faster so they don't have to waste a lot of time and money spinning because as a business owner, and you're one, you have limited resources. Typically people have limited resource, even if they're a multi-million dollar company, it's never enough money, and you want to make wise decisions, and intuition can help with that. So those are kind of the avenues I play in.
Just beautiful. I can feel how good you are at this. I'm
Oh,
really, really happy that my friend Sally told me about you. Which program of yours has she been doing?
So she did the Energy Essentials class and then the Women's Intuition and Healing 5-week class. And that is one of my favorite. The Women's Intuition Healing, that's teaching women how to turn on their own female energy. And you probably say this as a matchmaker to women. Like you're probably, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's so important for women to run their own energy, not be in competition with men, not kind of not play in the man's game. Like, how do women have their own power? And that it's separate from what a man brings to the table. So their own energy, their own pictures, their own programming, separating from where men are setting the tone to run more of their female energy. So that's all the things I teach around that.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
really glad to have this chance to share you with my tribe. If people want to find out about you, should they go straight to Swallow? Do they go to Clarity School? What's the best place for them to go?
They can find everything through shannonswallow.com, and Clary School is spelled a little bit like within, we use the word Claire. So yeah, it's just shannonswallow.com.
Well, I really appreciate your time. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know more about Shannon Swallow, is that your real last name?
Is, yep, born with it. And it's funny. Yeah, there's a long history with that, but I've had women come up to me, oh, that sounds like an actress, and men come up and, oh, that sounds like a porn star, and I can't win. So yeah, it just whichever. There's that. Look at, I'm blushing even as I say
So
it.
at
Still,
any rate,
yeah.
well, I'm really glad to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, it's your turn. Go out there and transform me to we for yourself. Thanks for being here.